All right. Aloha, y'all. It's your boy Jay. I'm doing a mic check here. We're going to talk about the copyright. Yup. Of AI. Got to go out. Yeah. Control room. So you don't hear me. Yeah. So, yeah, we're just talking about the copyright of AI. And we're going to talk about this video because that's going to be a big problem here in the future. Um, we're going to go through this TED talk from a couple years ago, and we're going to try to find out here what exactly the future of copyright with an AI is going to be. So um, I'm gonna pull up this video, and I'm gonna be stopping it and talking to you. We'll be discussing it as we go along here. So let me try to share this screen. Okay, we're gonna share that. All right, hopefully I'm still in the corner there. Yeah. Okay, you still got me in the corner. Okay, here we go.
The technology and vision behind generative AI is amazing, but stealing the work of the world's creators to build it is not. There are three key things that AI companies need to build their models. Three key resources: people, compute, and data. That is, engineers to build the models, GPUs to run the training process, and data to train the models on. AI companies spend vast sums on the first two, sometimes $1 million per engineer, and up to $1 billion per model. But they expect to take the third resource, training data, for free. Right now, many AI companies train on creative work they haven't paid for or even asked permission to use. This is unfair and unsustainable. But if we reset and license our training data, we can build a better generative AI ecosystem that works for everyone, both the AI companies themselves and the creators, without whose work these models would not exist. Most AI companies today do not license the majority of their training data. They use web scrapers to find, download, and train on as much content as they can gather. They're often pretty secretive about what they do train on, but what's clear is that training on copyrighted work without a license is rife. For instance, when the Mozilla Foundation looked at 47 large language models released between 2019 and 2023, they found that 64% of them were trained in part on Common Crawl, a dataset that includes copyrighted works, such as...
So I just want to say right off the bat here that I think the number one thing that a lot of people are missing here is, with the explosion of AI and with all the chat bots, being developed out there, I don't think a lot of people realize that the same way, creativity is changing. I also think that people have to understand that laws will also have to change. You know, there is no guarantee that, you know, copyright or copyright infringement will be a thing of in the future. Yeah, that exists now, but I mean, you can go back to the beginning of time, and the same way technology changes things, I also feel like legality is going to change over time. So I think because as obviously, if you're a subscriber to this channel, you obviously know that we produce a lot of AI generated content as far as art, music, and video. And yeah, sure, the large language models they probably do take a lot of copywritten material to learn from, but as they say, you can't stop the future of innovation. So what I like to do is we're gonna keep watching this here, and you know, hey, aloha berry bags, and we're gonna maybe get some comments from some people in the chat here. So we're gonna keep it going.
such as newspaper articles from major publications, and a further 21% didn't reveal enough information to know either way. Training on copyrighted work without a license has rapidly become standard across much of the generative AI industry. But this training, this unlicensed training on creative work, has serious negative consequences for the people behind that work. And this is for the simple reason that generative AI competes with its training data. This is not the narrative that AI companies like to portray. We like to talk about democratization, about letting more people be creative, but the fact that AI competes with its training data is inescapable. A large language model trained on short stories can create competing short stories. An AI image model trained on stock images can create competing stock images. An AI music model trained on music that's licensed to TV shows can create competing music to license to TV shows. These models.
So once again, you got the situation where, um, you know, in capitalism, competition is key. So, as he stated, if AI is competing against this, that, and the other, to me, that's just called the evolution of business. So, I mean, in any sort of business, any sort of capitalistic business environment, you are going to have competition. So let's keep it going.
Models, however imperfect, are so quick and easy to use that this competition is inevitable. And this isn't just theoretical. Generative AI is still pretty new, but we're already seeing exactly the sort of effects you'd expect in a world in which generative AI competes with its training data. For instance, the well-known filmmaker Ram Gopal Varma recently said that he'll use AI music in all his projects going forward. Indeed, there are multiple reports of people starting to listen to AI music in place of human-produced music. And recently, an AI song hit number 48 in the German charts. In all these cases, AI music is competing with the songs it was trained on. Or take Kelly McKernan. Kelly is an artist from Nashville. For 10 years, they made enough money selling their work that art was their full-time income. But in 2022, a data set that included their works was used to train a popular AI image model. Their name was one of many used by huge numbers of people to create art in the style of specific human artists. Kelly's income fell by 33%, almost overnight. Illustrators around the world report similar stories being outcompeted by AI models they have reason to believe were trained on their work.
So once again, you have to realize that you got a situation here where you could have that argument. You could have that argument all the way until the beginning to the end of time.
Work today is broken. Every day, people juggle so many different tools just to get work done.
Let me go back. So once again, you could say that until the end, to the end of time. I mean, how do you think, people who created vinyl records, how do you think they felt when they came out with CDs? How do you think CD manufacturers felt when they created digital downloads? So I just feel like, sure. I mean, and every artist in any type of genre, from music to video to art, yeah, your income will suffer if you don't start to adapt to AI. Because, I mean, let's face the fact, you're not going back in time. No one's going to go back in time. Innovation is not going to go backwards. It's only going to go forward. So once again, I just, as an artist, I firmly believe that instead of putting handcuffs on the AI technology, I think it's more of a realistic view that individual artists have to learn to work with AI. And more importantly, they have to learn how to generate income from AI. So we'll keep it going here.
The freelance platform Upwork wrote a white paper in which they looked at the effects that they've seen on the job market of generative AI. They looked at how job postings on their platform have changed since the introduction of ChatGPT, and sure enough, they found exactly what you'd expect, that generative AI has reduced the demand for freelance writing tasks by 8%, which increases to 18% if you look at only what they term lower value tasks. So, the initial data we have, plus the individual stories we hear, all align with the logical assumption. Generative AI competes with the work it's trained on. It's so quick and easy to use, it's inevitable, and it competes with the people behind that work. Now, creators argue this training is illegal. The legal framework of copyright affords creators the exclusive right to authorize copies of their work, and AI training involves copying. Here in the US, many AI companies argue that training AI falls under the fair use copyright exception, which allows unlicensed copying in a limited set of circumstances, such as creating parodies of a work. Creators and rights holders strongly disagree, saying there's no way this narrow exception can be used to legitimize the mass exploitation of creative work, to create automated competitors to that work. And for the record, I entirely agree. Of course, this question is previously untested in the courts, and there are currently around 30 ongoing lawsuits brought by rights holders against AI companies, which will help to address this question. But this will take time, and creators are suffering from what they see as unjust competition right now.
So once again, he's talking about, 30 lawsuits. I mean, it's going to get to the point where I could definitely see the courts being completely filled, completely overwhelmed with lawsuits. And that's the reason why I believe eventually they're going to have to come up with some sort of happy medium to where, copyright infringement as we know it, I don't believe will continue to exist. It's just the chatbot is too smart, it's too fast, and it's too innovative for the courts to keep hearing lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. I think eventually, it's just going to come to a point where they eventually say, for the most part, for lack of a better term, copyright infringement, that's a term of the past. So let's keep going here.
So they propose a solution that has been used and worked before: licensing. If a commercial entity wants to use copyrighted work, be it for merchandise manufacturing or building a streaming service, they license that work. Now, AI companies have a bunch of reasons why this shouldn't apply to them. There's the fair use legal exception that I've already mentioned. There's also the argument that since humans can train on copyrighted work without a license, AI should be allowed to too. But this is a very hard claim to justify. Artists have been learning from each other for centuries. When you create, you expect other people to learn from you. You learn from a range of sources, from other art to textbooks to taking lessons, much of this you or someone else paid for, supporting the entire ecosystem. In generative AI, commercial entities valued at millions or billions of dollars scrape as much content as they can, often against creators' will, without payment, making multiple copies along the way, which are subject to copyright law, to create a highly scalable competitor to what they're copying. So scalable, in fact, that there are AI image generators estimated to be making 2.5 million images a day, and AI song generators outputting 10 songs a second. To argue that human learning and AI training are the same and should be treated the same is preposterous.
And that's a good point. And that's also my point exactly. I mean, the amount of content that these chatbots can create in such a small amount of time. I mean, you'll never be able to, once that genie is out of the bottle, you'll never be able to put it back in. So I think, trying to file a lawsuit, I just think you're chasing ghosts here. I just don't think you'll ever be able to put that genie back in the bottle just for the sheer amount of volume that the chatbot is able to produce in such a short period of time.
AI companies also argue that licensing their training data would be impractical. They use so much training data, they say, that individual payments to each creator behind the data would be small. But this is true of many content licensing markets. Creators still want to get paid, even if the payments are small. AI companies also argue that they simply use too much data for licensing to even be feasible. But this is harder and harder to believe in a world in which there is such a range of data sets that you can access with permission. You can license data from media companies. There have been 27 major deals between AI companies and rights holders in the last year alone, and that's to say nothing of the smaller ones that don't get reported. There are marketplaces of training data where you can get more data. You can expand this with data that's in the public domain, that is, in which no copyright exists, like the 500 billion word data set, Common Corpus. You can expand this further with synthetic data, that is, data that's created itself by an AI model in which usually no copyright exists. So there are multiple options available to you if you want to build your model without infringing copyright. But the strongest evidence that it's possible to license all your data is that there are multiple companies doing it already. I know because I've done it myself. I've worked in what we now call generative AI for over a decade, and last September, my team at Stability AI released an AI music model that trained on licensed music. A number of other companies have done the same thing, and I founded Fairly Trained in order to highlight this fact and these companies.
So once again, you got to look at it from the standpoint of, he stated that his AI model trained off of licensed content and licensed data. I mean, how many black hat, if you will, black hat hackers or not so non-ethical individuals are going to have a completely different attitude towards that. So that's what I mean. I just think that for every individual that does it correctly, you'll have 3 or 4 individuals that decide to cut corners and not do it correctly. And I think that's why eventually the word copyright infringement, in the future won't exist.
Fairly Trained is a non-profit that certifies generative AI companies that don't train on copyrighted work without a license. We launched in January of this year, and we've already certified 18 companies. Now, these companies take a variety of approaches to licensing their training data. We have an AI voice model that's trained on individual voices it's licensed. We have an AI music model that's licensed more than 40 music catalogs. We have a large language model that's trained only on data in the public domain, mostly from government documents and records. We have companies who have paid upfront fees for their data. We have companies who share their revenue with their data providers. There is no one answer to the exact specifics of how one of these licensing deals has to work. The beauty of licensing is that the 2 parties can come together and figure out what works for them. And this is happening more and more. Now, you will hear that a requirement to license training data somehow stifles innovation, that it's only the big AI companies that can afford these huge upfront licensing fees. But in reality, it's the smaller startups who are bothering to license all their data, and they're doing so often without hefty upfront licensing fees, but using models such as revenue shares. And there's another major upside to licensing your training data. All of this training on copyrighted work is forcing publishers to shut off access to their content. The Data Provenance Initiative looked at 14,000 websites commonly used in AI training sets, and they found that over the course of a single year, looking at only the domains of the highest value for AI training, the number that was restricted via opt-outs or terms of service increased from 3% to between 20 and 33%. The web is being gradually closed due to unlicensed training. Now, this is bad for new AI models, for new entrants to the market, but also for everyone, researchers, consumers, and more, who benefit from an open internet.
So I think that's a little, that last statement is a bit non-realistic, because, I mean, the number one priority of a lot of artists, especially independent artists, is promotion, distribution. So to think that, individuals are going to so-called lock up content or close the internet down, or I should say close access to certain content, I just don't think is a realistic view. I think as a chatbot and these AI agents become smarter, faster, stronger, I just don't think that's a very realistic view at all.
It should come as no surprise that the general public do not agree with AI companies about what they can train their models on. One poll from the AI Policy Institute in April asked people about the common policy among AI companies of training on publicly available data. This is data that is openly available online, which of course includes a lot of copyrighted work, like news articles and often pirated media. 60% of people said this should not be allowed, versus only 19% who said it should. The same poll went on to ask whether AI companies should compensate data providers. 74% said yes, and only 9% said no. Time and time again, when we ask the public these questions, they show support for requirements around permission and payment, and a rejection of the notion that something being publicly available somehow makes it fair game. And the people who make the art that society consumes feel the same way. Today, we launched a statement on AI training, a short, simple, open letter which simply reads, "The unlicensed use of creative works for training generative AI is a major unjust threat to the livelihoods of the people behind those works and must not be permitted." This has already been signed by 11,000 and counting creators around the world, including Nobel-winning authors, Academy Award-winning actors, and Oscar-winning composers. And if you agree with this sentiment, I encourage you to sign it today at aitrainingstatement.org. What this statement, and previous ones like it, make abundantly clear is that these artists, these creators, view the unlicensed training on their work by generative AI models as totally unjust and potentially catastrophic to their professions. So if you are an advocate for unlicensed AI training, just remember that the people who wrote the music that you're listening to and the books you're reading probably disagree. So where does this leave us? Well, right now, many of the world's artists, writers, musicians, creators straight up hate generative AI. And we know from their own words that one of the reasons for this is that we're training on their work without asking them. But it doesn't have to be this way. The AI industry and the creative industries can be and should be mutually beneficial. But for this mutually beneficial relationship to emerge, we have to start from a position of respect for the value of the works being trained on and the rights of the people who made them. I'm not arguing that all AI development should be halted. I'm not arguing that AI should not exist. What I'm arguing is that the resources used to build generative AI should be paid for. Licensing is hard work. It will slow you down in the short term, but you'll ultimately reach exactly the same point, models that are just as capable, just as powerful, and you'll do so without forcing the world's publishers to batten down the hatches and destroy the commons, and without pitting the world's creators against you. So I hope that more AI companies will follow the example set by those we've certified at Fairly Trained and license all their training data. I hope that employees at these companies will demand this of their employers. And I hope that everyone who uses generative AI will ask what their favorite models were trained on. There is a future in which generative AI and human creativity can coexist, not just peacefully, but symbiotically. It's been a rough start, but it's not too late to change course. Thank you.
So there you have it. I mean, that's just one viewpoint. What this reminds me of a lot of, in one sense or another, file sharing when it came to, copywritten music many years ago. It was this big backlash. You had protests. There was the RIAA, the Recording Industry Association of America. They wanted to shut down Napster. But the problem is, the big problem And the main correlation that I see here is it's just the amount of content that's out there. The big problem that came with file sharing and things of that nature is it was just absolutely too much content, too many files out there to try to handcuff. So more or less, as they've stated, only the super popular, ultra popular musicians really make any money from 99-cent downloads and things of that nature. It's gotten to the point where the artists have more or less relinquished control, and they give away their music basically for free now, and they hope to make money on the tour circuit and doing live concerts. So I really don't think, because of the amount of content that's being created by these AI models, I just don't think copyright infringement laws will clamp it down. So that's my take on that. I hope you enjoyed the video. Hopefully you subscribe to our channel, check out our AI generated content, and we got many videos. We're coming out with AI generated music, and also we have a lot of AI generated artwork that you can look for in the future. So y'all hit that like button, y'all hit that sub button, y'all hit that follow button, and hit that notification button. We coming back at you. Aloha and mahalo.